Greetings, this is Griff with part one of my new series on what I'm going to call Ecclesiology for Sedevacantists. Um, a brief discussion just on what occasioned this. There have come to be a number of, in my opinion, openly scandalous declarations or claims against the authority of our traditional bishops. It is actually a heresy, as I'll get to later in future sections, but it is wildly wrongly claimed that our traditional bishops somehow wouldn't possess the regular canonical jurisdiction that the church's bishops have had from the days of the apostles. That claim is a lie. It is a lie of the devil. It has been surreptitiously spread in dark corners and from under rocks, whispered where it can never be examined under the light of day. Well, it's time to turn on the lights. And so that's what I've come to do. So how do we do that? Well, the best way to do that is to start with standard theological handbooks. Now, I picked one. It so happens this is Volume 2, Dogmatic Theology, Volume 2, Christ's Church, by Msgr G. van Noort. So, it's pretty good. It's solid. It's a whole book just devoted to ecclesiology alone. Other volumes are devoted to other things. So, I could have picked any one of them. This was what seemed reasonably available and about the right scope and scale. However, I have no reason to think that what he says in here is not representative of what any standard theological handbook will tell you. Is it perfect? Of course not. Nothing ever is. The biggest difficulty I've seen in this is one small area where he sometimes confuses body and college with reference to the bishops as successors of the apostles. He seems to use almost totally the word college, regardless of whether it's a body or not. I want to take a few moments here, a brief aside to explain what that distinction is. All right, and this is from Ryan Flows into the Tiber, because the discussion came up at Vatican II. Basically, and I quote from page 228, there were three interpretations of collegiality. According to the first, the College of Bishops did not exercise supreme power by divine right, but only by human right. That meant that it rested with the Pope to make the Episcopal College a subject of supreme power, for example, by convening an ecumenical council. So it says, for example, maybe there's other ways he could do that. Interesting. According to this explanation, the Pope alone enjoyed supreme power by divine right. That was the conservative stand, or the traditional stand. According to the second, or extreme interpretation, which was defended and promoted by some liberals, the only subject of supreme power was the College of Bishops together with its head, the Pope. The Pope could exercise supreme power, but in so doing he would be acting only as head of the college, or in other words, only insofar as he represented the college. He would be bound in conscience to request the opinion of the College of Bishops before making a pronouncement, because, as representative of the college, he was obliged to express the thinking of the college. According to the third or moderate interpretation, which was held by Pope SIC, Paul, and other liberal council fathers, see, interesting, the middle one's actually called the liberal. The Pope personally was the subject of supreme power in the Church, and also the College of Bishops when united to its head, the Pope. In this hypothesis, the consent of the Pope was necessary as an essential constituent element of the supreme power of the college. In other words, the Pope possessed supreme power by divine right and was always free to use it, while the Episcopal College possessed supreme power by divine right, but was not always free to use it. Since the college was obliged to act with and under its head, the Pope, it was dependent upon the Pope in using its supreme power. In this way, the unity of the supreme authority of the Church was not impaired. So this was a very subtle distinction between when the church calls all the bishops taken together a body versus when they're simply called versus when they're called a college. I mean, when they're a college, they're still a body. A body of college is a special kind of body. But even when they're not specifically college in the strict sense is spoken of here, they're still a body. That's the traditional doctrine is that. And as you can see, two other ideas were floated at Vatican II, and obviously what resulted was kind of a mixture of the two. So, but I don't think that distinction is intentional. And I said, so he uses the word college everywhere. Obviously, he is not trying to get into that kind of subtle distinction. As explained at the very first beginning of the first volume, which is The True Religion, this is volume 1, he states here that Van Noort has a peculiar ability to expose the heart of a problem succinctly and to define it in sharp outlines. He never avoids deep problems, yet it is in his treatment he omits useless subtleties which might be of interest to specialists, but which would only bewilder novices. Obviously, such a distinction about different kinds of how the bishops may or may not be colleges versus a body was considered for him to be one of those subtle nuances. So when you see the word college of bishop or phrase college of bishops, some contexts as the original apostolic college or college when so designated by the Pope, the traditional sense as in an ecumenical council, he is using it correctly, even in the nuanced manner, but only accidentally. In other places, he also uses college almost exclusively, and he really means the body of the bishops. Now, the only other thing that I can say that I found the least basis for complaint on the pages of Van Noort come in some of the later chapters when it's talking about church and state. There's a handful of places where he refers to liberalism as though it had a good name that could be besmirched by bad behavior or something. Well, no, liberalism is a sin. So, and this could even be the result of his translators, and it may not even necessarily originate in the man's work itself. Or there's a couple of places where he has quoted certain questionable characters such as John Courtney Murray or Jacques Maritain favorably, as if they were sources. But the footnote would just praise them for some particularly clever way they defended some point that itself would probably have been perfectly fine. Still, it kind of suggests there could have been a little sympathy for something that was a little odd. However, those exceptions noted, it is clear as he's writing this volume, he is not exploring all of those kinds of ideas that were in the 1950s. This is a 1957 edition, by the way, were at most a speculative idea that was just a very dim current. He had interest in these things. Obviously, nobody back in 1957 or before had any idea where all that was headed. So I don't think that that's really anything wrong. From what I'm seeing here, the book, I don't believe actually contains anything actually wrong. Like I said, it's a little sloppy with college versus body, but that's just, he's not getting into too much detail, so that's not actually wrong. And again, if you want to quote some person for arguing something brilliantly, even if that person might be a heretic, well, you can find a number of heretics who have sometimes argued some particular points with praiseworthy brilliance. It happens. So even that could be construed as legitimate. Outside of that, everything here is not just Msgr G. Van Noort's opinion. This is standard Catholic theology. What this really means is, what I am presenting is, in this new series of Ecclesiology for Sedevacantists, is not just Griff Ruby's opinion, it is Catholic theology. I'm going to be doing pretty much a straight read-through of substantial portions of this volume. That's the goal here. No more looking at little short quotes that can be made to sound like they're or mean anything anybody wants. When you get the full sweep of what it's saying, you learn a lot of interesting things, but also you see the various things and the various quotes that sometimes get misused in the appropriate context, and you go, oh, that's all they're saying here, and they didn't say some of these other things that some people attributed to theology. Well, in the next part, I will crack this book officially, and we will begin. Thank you.